Reddit, a place where anyone can say anything, anytime, completely anonymously. It's a place of secrets, confessions, even buried guilt. But what happens when those confessions take a dark and disturbing turn, and the truth finally comes out? Welcome to Morbid World, and these are the most haunting confessions of Reddit. Starting off, we have something truly and utterly disturbing. Reddit user ithrewthisaway made a confession that still haunts them more than a decade later. When they were around 12 years old, they had owned a pet rat, one of several they had had. They say they were never really ready for that kind of responsibility, though. Each rat was eventually given away, lost, or even forgotten altogether. But this one stayed. At first, it was nothing. It was just annoying, too noisy at night, and just too much work. So they thought it would be a good idea to remove its wheel. And then, its food. But not because they wanted to hurt it. Because they didn't want to face what was happening. They described it as a depression. A numb, hollow kind of guilt that made even the simple tasks impossible. Eventually, they were too afraid to even look in the cage. They could hear it at night. The scratching, the trying to escape, or maybe just even begging for help. But they did nothing. It took almost 2 weeks. The rat died alone, trapped in a cage, and it couldn't escape from being completely dependent on someone who didn't even care. But that's not where the story ends either, because they left the body in the cage for a whole week, frozen emotionally and physically by the fear of being found out, by the guilt of what they had done and what they hadn't done. They said when they finally looked in the cage, it wasn't curled up like you would expect. Yet it was stiff, stretched forward, legs pulled tight like it had been tied to a rack. Like a little Superman, they said, or something that had died in agony. Eventually a family friend came over and wanted to play with the rat. They had no choice but to walk her into the room and have a fake reaction, totally playing pretend, acting like they had just discovered the truth. And at that moment, they said it burned into their mind forever. This wasn't a violent outburst. It wasn't pleasure. It was neglect. Quiet, drawn out, and absolutely unforgivable. They don't tell this story to be dramatic. They tell it because they want people to understand the things you ignore, the guilt you bury, the choices you think won't matter, they don't go away. Not when you're 12, not even 14 years later. Now this next one isn't as graphic as the one before, but it might be one of the heaviest confessions of all. Reddit user throwaway 92539 lived on a quiet road, a sleepy neighborhood tucked behind a busy intersection, the kind of place where impatient commuters cut through to skip red lights. Each morning, cars would fly by, 50, sometimes 60 miles an hour, on a road marked 25. They were sick of it. They had complained, and so had the neighbors. But still, nothing changed. So one night, they thought they would take things into their own hands, dragging a tree branch into the middle of the road. Not huge, but big enough to force drivers to swerve. This wasn't done in anger. It wasn't meant to hurt anybody. It was just exhaustion, frustration, desperation at best. They went to bed, feeling satisfied, like maybe finally someone would be forced to slow down. But that night, someone didn't slow down. A man, alone in his pickup truck. He didn't see the branch in time, and he swerved, losing control, and rolled over 50 meters down the road. When emergency services arrived, there was nothing to save. Everyone assumed it was just an accident, just bad luck. But the Redditor, they knew the truth. The tire tracks were right next to the branch, the same branch that they had placed there hours earlier. They didn't tell anyone. They didn't move the branch. They never came forward. They just watched the news report, saw the flashing lights, heard the neighborhood chatter, and just stayed quiet. They wrote, "I don't want forgiveness. I don't need sympathy. But I do need to say this out loud. That man died because of me." Now for this one, We're taking a step back out of the disturbing side and heading to the more sad and unfortunate side. User tumorfortheroad was only 25 when they got the news. A doctor walked in and handed them a death sentence. Pancreatic cancer. No cure, 3 to 6 months to live. In their words, I'm not angry. I'm not even depressed. I'm just floored. The post was long, rambling, like they were trying to just make sense of something that didn't make sense. They talked about missed birthdays, weddings they'd never attend, friends they'd never get to say goodbye to. They said, I always thought I'd die old. I had planned my life, like I had all the time in the world. But now, there would be no time, no old age, no next chapter. They didn't tell their family either. They didn't want to ruin what little time they had had left with fear and grief. Instead, they chose love, quiet moments, and those final memories. They wrote, I just want to leave the world a little better than I found it, even if I didn't get to finish what I started. The post ended with one last update. Months later, they were weaker and closer to the end. They thanked everyone who had shown kindness and quietly signed off. It's crazy to know that just a few months after, this man probably passed away. His words forever etched onto this site forever. Some confessions aren't always about something we just did out of ill intent. Sometimes they are about something we never even meant to happen in the first place. Something we can never take back. User throwaway 053595 was only 5 years old when he accidentally ended a life. It was a hot Sunday. His parents, both pastors, busy with the church. He and his little brother, just 3 years old, were outside with the other kids. Tired, fussy, exhausted from the heat, his brother told him he was sleepy. And in what he thought was a harmless idea, he told him to go nap in the family's car. I'm sure you can see where this one is going. And the heat inside the vehicle was unforgiving. The hours passed, and eventually the service ended. His mom had asked where the little ones went, and he told her. She ran to the car, and then came the scream, the kind of sound that stays in your soul, a scream that meant something was wrong, deeply wrong. He watched his father try to perform CPR and desperately save his little brother, but unfortunately, he never came back. The funeral came and went, and no one ever knew what had really happened. No one ever blamed him, because no one knew. Years later, he realized, and the weight crushed him. He tried to be the perfect son after that. His parents had another child, a daughter, and he loved her like he was making up for what he had lost. He lived to make them proud, to replace the pain. He even got a full ride to a prestigious university. But still, they don't know what truly had happened that day. He said he nearly ended his own life because of the guilt, but he remembered a promise he made back then, a silent one, to live for both of them. Now, years later, he's learning to forgive himself, but he knows the hardest part he'll ever do is tell his parents the truth. Now, even though this kid was really young and didn't know any better, it's still really sad to see how things went down. Maybe with a little more supervision, or maybe if somebody was there, maybe it would have turned out differently. Either way, a life was lost. A child's life, that is. Now, this confession is a lot different than the ones we've covered thus far. This one's more about survival. User NoPin4981 lives in a country where being gay is a crime. But worse than that, he lives in a home where it might be a death sentence. He was outed by a family member. His cousin told his parents, devout Muslims, the kind who believe in honor killings. They told him they might call the cops. They also told him the chance of honor killing him was very likely, and he believed them. No one would help him either. No support system, no one willing to be seen with him. He felt like a ghost in his own world. So he deleted his SIM card, cut off all digital traces, packed his documents, grabbed what he could, and vanished. He planned to live in his car until his friend offered him a place to stay. It wasn't safe, but it was something. That's when he remembered his uncle, wealthy and living in California, someone he thought he could trust. So he made a fake Facebook account and sent him a message explaining everything. The uncle said he'd help. Asylum could be an option, but without solid proof of threat, it's not guaranteed. Meanwhile, his parents noticed he was gone, and they started looking for him. Now he's hiding, waiting, burning through his savings and sleeping on a borrowed bed, watching his shadows outside every night. Now this last one isn't too crazy at all. Reddit user suspicious_tomato685 was in 2nd grade. A quiet kid, well-behaved, and never caused too much trouble. One afternoon, during the after-school program though, they found a box mounted on the wall. Bright red, marked with bold letters, "Press here," next to a little flame symbol. They knew what it was. The teachers had just gone over it. Do not touch this. It's for emergencies only. But when you're 7, those words don't always mean much. Curiosity crept in, and so they pressed it. Alarms exploded, sirens shrieked, kids screamed, and everybody ran out the door. They stepped back, put on a blank face, and watched chaos unfold. The fire trucks arrived. The teachers scrambled. And then came the question. Did anyone see who did it? No one suspected the quiet one. Another kid got blamed. That student's parents were told they owed the school $600, the cost of sending emergency responders. He kept denying it, but they didn't believe him. Eventually, the fine was dropped, but the memory never was. User suspicious_tomato685 never told a soul. Not the school, not their parents, not even the kid they let take the fall. They are now 32 years old and still scared to confess. But there we have it. Confessions people were never meant to say out loud. Some were accidents, some were secrets buried for years, some were never meant to be forgiven. But all of them, they still haunt the people who lived them. Hello everybody. As usual, if you made it this far into the video, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. We are slowly picking up on views, little by little, and I'm actually super surprised and appreciative of it. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this one, because I know I did. Reading some of these confessions was honestly insane. People on Reddit can be pretty crazy. That being said, if you guys enjoyed today's topic, please like, comment, and maybe even consider subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.